Today's video is going to cover three topics in particular. The first being the discipline instilled by Graham Potter across the squad. The second covering the players who are on the cards to be leaving West Ham, possibly within the next 7 days. And the third topic is what we have left to do in the transfer market, or whether the latest interview given by Graham Potter might suggest that our transfer business is done and dusted. But before I do that, if you're new to this channel or if you watched the West Ham Voice before, but yet to become a subscriber, please subscribe to this channel. All the content is free. And I've also launched a membership scheme. So please do go into the West Ham Voice website, West Ham Voice YouTube channel to look for further details of that as well. So let's start with the first topic. Now, amongst many of the transfer rumours that were bandied around last week, one suggested that Graham Potter was looking to reunite with former Brighton midfielder Yves Bissouma, who now plays for Spurs. In a press conference held by new Spurs manager Thomas Frank this week, he explained why Bissouma had been kept out of the squad to face PSG in the European Super Cup, which was played on Wednesday evening. By the way, they lost Spurs. Citing disciplinary issues with the player for being consistently late for training, which is why he was left out of the squad. Now, what on earth has this got to do with West Ham, I hear you ask? Well, that kind of attitude and ill discipline is highly unlikely Potter wants such a player amongst his current squad at West Ham. You see, he's already had to deal with a player like that in the West Ham squad, and as a result, that player missed out on the US tour recently. That player is reported to be Emerson Palmieri. Now, a recent update suggested that Emerson had consistently turned up late for a number of training sessions last season, which resulted in the player being sidelined since Potter's arrival to West Ham and culminated, as I've said, in Emerson being omitted from the US tour. Now, for many from the outside, Potter might be regarded as a bit of a Mr. Nice Guy, a kumbaya type of manager, a bit of a walkover. Well, just because a manager wants to instill a sense of togetherness, a bit of camaraderie amongst the squad, doesn't necessarily make him a soft touch. Far from it. The one thing that has been said about the squad since the beginning of pre-season is that sense of togetherness, a sense of unity. And Potter isn't going to allow anyone to break that bond. Now, it's the kind of bond that could win us some valuable points in games next season, which could prove to be absolutely crucial to how our season goes and where in the league we might finish. That sense of togetherness isn't just born from everyone having a bit of a jolly, but it's also the result of every squad player following the same rules and the same disciplines. With Emerson being consistently late, Potter made his point, and from my understanding, was also very clear with the player directly as to why he was not going to the US. Ever since then, it's understood that Emerson has not turned up late for training. Potter has told his players that they may not have been his players. Last season, he inherited that particular squad, but this season, they are most definitely his players, and they will all follow the same code of conduct. Potter wants harmony in the dressing room, and he won't tolerate anyone stepping out of line, which might disrupt that. Fair play, I say. I just wonder how much more is going on in the background, Emerson aside. Now, where does this leave Emerson himself going into this season? I don't know. We all know that Malik Diouf is now at the club and that Ollie Scholes is not going to go out on loan to QPR and is determined to push for a place in the starting lineup or at the very least being on the bench. So either Emerson is third choice left back, or he'll be considered for a different role within the squad. I don't know, maybe a winger, or he will be sold. Now, with the arrival of Diouf, many fans were speculating that Emerson was going to be sold anyway, and that may well be the case before this window shuts. But Emerson aside, as I mentioned on Monday, in Monday's show, there are players that could also be soon leaving West Ham, probably within the next week. And that's part two of this update. Those players include Edson Alvarez, Andy Irving, Guido Rodriguez, and Maxwell Cornet. with suggestions that Rodriguez is going to be the first to leave pretty soon. Now, agents are working hard to find new clubs for these players. And as I mentioned the other day, if we sell a player like of some value, like Alvarez, then I think we all expected, and I certainly did, we all expected pretty much a decent marquee signing to come in as a replacement. But will that happen? I'm no longer certain that it will. Now, if we sell the likes of Irving, Rodriguez, Cornet, or all of them, some or all of them, they're likely to bring in a modest return, 2 or 3 million here, give or take. And if we do sell players like that, then I suggested, and I still stick to this, that we are probably going to look to bring in the likes of Josh Brownhill and perhaps Angao Isle Mukau from Lille. Now, Potter, as it currently stands, will use all the players at his disposal right now. So if he thinks that someone like Irvin or Rodriguez is going to be able to do a job in the team for that particular game, then he won't hesitate to use them whilst they're still at West Ham. But expect further changes to this squad before the transfer window shuts. And I mean further changes in terms of who else might be leaving. Potter has made it very clear he wants to bring the average age of the squad down, but he also wants to bring the number of the players within the squad down as well. And he's doing just that. But this leads me on to where we are with the squad and whether our transfer business is done. Part 3 of this update. It looks as if we've moved on from the bid for Fernandes. West Ham, the senior sources said that he's going no higher than the £30 million offer that was made. Is that sensible? I kind of think it is. And if I did a poll of all the viewers who commented back on this story that came out yesterday, I think many viewers will agree that 30 million is probably the peak. But does that seem to suggest then that we're going to be looking elsewhere? Well, it kind of should do. It looks as if there is money available or some money available to go in for another central midfielder. But, moving some of the fringe players out of West Ham will give us that a better opportunity to bring that extra midfielder in. But a recent comment from the senior source, as well as comments made by Potter in a recent interview, seems to suggest that money is still extremely tight and that players do seem to have to leave before further players come in. Potter has acknowledged the financial constraints he's under and seems to understand it, seems to accept it. The senior source stated that when Tim Steidten was here, the reason why he got players over the line was because he was paying high wages and high transfer fees, which the club are now stuck with. West Ham are finding it hard to move players on who are on high salaries. But let's be fair, Mr. Senior Source, that was on the board's watch, unless, of course, they really did give Tim Steidten a blank checkbook to sign these players, to sign all these players. I don't think that happened, do you? Now, the senior source also again referred to FFP and how the sale of Mohamed Kudus has helped immensely there. So despite the sale of Kudus, the whole transfer window has been a fine balancing act and one in which Potter acknowledges and is working within the constraints of. And there has been a shift in transfers, hasn't there? The Juve transfer is moderate in this day and age, and his wages are also likely to be relatively low. Same goes for Hermansen. 15 mil plus add-ons is a very low fee. And again, he's likely to be on moderate wages as well. And then the 2 free agents that we brought in, Kyle Walker-Peters, would not have been on the highest of wages at Southampton. And the much publicised Callum Wilson deal is all apparently performance-related pay. Now, with all that in mind, if West Ham are to get the one more player in midfield, in central midfield, it's beginning to feel as if it's not going to be a transfer busting signing, but yet another player that's going to be on low wages and with a low transfer fee to come. That's why my hope still lies on Mukau coming to West Ham. A moderate £20 million bid and moderate wages to go with it will indeed continue the trend of that we've seen throughout this summer transfer window at West Ham. But what if we don't buy any more players? Even if we do move some of the fringe players on? Potter has spoken about how he wishes to use the resources available to him, and that sometimes the answer isn't always going out and spending money in the transfer market. So, by that, he must mean further utilising our academy players. Freddie Potts has worked his way into the squad. Callum Marshall looks as if he will be retained rather than sent out on loan. Luis Guilherme is getting a fair crack of the whip out wide. He certainly had that in pre-season. But it's central midfield that concerns us all. And will the likes of Lewis Orford, Preston Fearon, George Earthy give us the answers that we need? But there is one player that we kind of all forgotten about until the game game last night against Woking for the under-21s, and that's Mohamadou Kante. He played in the under-21s game, coming on the 58th minute, and he changed the course of the game. In the 89th minute, he threaded a great ball through into the penalty area, which was square to Lewis Orford to tuck away our first goal. And then deep into stoppage time, he nicked the ball just outside the 18-yard box, drove into the penalty area, and struck a great low drive. He was controlled in the midfield with power, pace, and skill. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that all of a sudden he's going to go from a subs appearance in the under-21s to becoming the kind of player that we need in the centre of our midfield. But it's early days for the young player. He was also on tour in the US with the senior squad, and he could be a player who develops into the senior squad sooner rather than later. So perhaps Potter is right. Perhaps he's right to suggest that by improving doesn't always mean having to dip into the transfer market. But I worry about that. My gut says that we still need one more player, one more central midfielder, a player that's going to be box to box a midfielder, someone to drive the team forward. I think Kante is a great prospect, but I still think we need to go out and buy that one player. But if Potter does decide to use the resources available to him by bringing in development players from the academy squad, should we be upset by that? We always wanted a manager that was going to use youth. And now it looks as if we've got a manager that's going to use youth. Are we going to back him if he does that? It's going to be an interesting few more weeks in the transfer market. I think all focus at this moment in time does look as if it's players leaving the club rather than coming in. Do I think we're going to sign anyone? I still think we should. And whether we will or not is another matter. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Do leave your comments, and I will see you all again very soon.